Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we're going to tackle our infinite food storage. Mostly because, well, we're starting to have to grow a lot of mealwood, and we need to make sure that it's going to be well kept before we transition over into grub fruit. The reason being is in the background, we've increased up to 19 duplicates. We just added a couple more runners. And you'll remember from last episode that we weren't having any problems without having a power shut off here. Well, I loaded up the game today, and we were having problems with it. So it seems to be somewhat inconsistent. Not 100% sure what is going on. We will continue to tackle it. I know one problem that we are having is I've been adding batteries to our grid, and our batteries are in different stages of being filled. So the grid really doesn't like that sort of inconsistent power draw. So I'm trying to get all of the power drained, and that way they can all charge up at once. So I think what we're going to do to start off with is wait for these two batteries to be finished, and then we're just going to, disable power generation and just let all of them drain. And then we'll let the dupes get back on the wheels to charge them up. Also in the background, we've done quite a bit of digging. We always put digging up on a 3 or a 4 priority, just when the dupes get bored, they have something to do. It can't be in the 100% complete background because, of course, we've had a couple of dupes get stuck. We've also cleared out this area here for our kitchen and 2 great halls. And the reason why I always try to put my kitchen and my great halls together as close as possible is that way the duplicates don't have far to run to get their meals. Additionally, we've been adding to our temporary zoo here, and this is truly temporary. In the end game, we're going to do some nice zoos and make sure each critter is properly taken care of. But for right now, when I see a critter, I wanted to grab it. For instance, we had a poke shell come through on the old printing pod, and I didn't want to miss out on the opportunity to get one for free here on the home colony. Oh, the polluted water? Don't worry about that polluted water. But generally speaking, the colony's doing pretty well. We don't even have long commutes because, well, most of our duplicates work here, and so it keeps the average commute time down. No one's getting sick. We got a little bit of stress, and the polluted water may have been Marie's fault. I'm not pointing fingers here. Our reed fiber and plastic production are going well. In fact, we got almost 6 tons of plastic already. So I think we're going to go ahead and upgrade our base's ladders with some nice plastic. Beautiful. If you ever wondered why you want to upgrade your ladders, well, it's because plastic ladders increase run speed by 20%. Whereas the regular ladders don't do anything for run speed. Just one of the small little changes you can make to help your dupes be as efficient as possible. And in the background, I have been letting materials science research go by the wayside because I'm just not good enough to remember to turn the signal switch on once per cycle. So what we're going to do is add the automation timer, and that way this thing will fire once per cycle. And we're going to keep the manual switch just in case we need to ever turn it off. But for now, we'll just throw in the timer, and I'll set it up to where it's firing once per day. In the coming episodes, we'll be switching 100% over to grub fruit. Depending on how long infinite food storage takes us today, we may end up getting started on that in this episode, but I'm not 100% sure. This is the amount of mealwood it's taking to feed 19 duplicates. There's a small quality of life feature I use to make my life a little bit easier, and is I separate the mealwoods every 5, and that way I can easily see this is 1 duplicate, this is 2 duplicate, and so on. So you can quickly count there are 19 batches of 5 mealwoods, which I know means we have plenty of food to feed our population. And we're doing plenty good on dirt. This planetoid was filled with it. We're still sitting at over 1,000 tons. So we could technically get away with running mealwood for the rest of days. We wouldn't end up running out of dirt before we got into rocketry, and then we could just go get more dirt from the planetoids. But, I mean, let's be honest, it's mealwood. Now, that's not to say that morale's a problem, because it's not. Most dupes are doing just fine. Ari is our small exception, because I guess Ari is just special. Look at that machining score of 25. Oh, wow. Let's go check on Ari and figure out what's going on with him. Oh, dear goodness. Well, This is going to be a problem. It looks like I failed to set the timer in time and Gene managed to get hit in the head. And now we have no triage cot ready for the rescue. Ari, you're going to have to wait, buddy. Always have a triage cot just laying around just in case this happens before you're ready. Prime example being me. I think we can just put the triage cot for here for now. We will put an emergency on this and then wish old Gene luck. In the meantime, we should probably turn this off, shouldn't we? There we go. Stop firing rad bolts at unsuspecting dupes. Alright, triage cot was completed. Gene has already been assigned. Somebody go rescue Gene. Somebody? For real, why aren't we rescuing Gene? Let's put this on a higher priority, shall we? Thank you, Marie. Oh, I see. You could climb into the bed, but you couldn't walk your happy butt over to the triage. Now, why is Gossman doing the doctoring? Let's go ahead and change that up. We already have a doctor. So let's just... There we go. Now all is right in the world. Go take care of business, Harold. I don't even know why Gene was standing there. Normally they stand here when they're doing their research. You know what? I think we can fix this one better. Alright, this is better. Now when the dupe comes in, they'll be barely standing in the radiation when they do the research here. Not a big deal. They'll end up using the bathroom and all that radiation will be gone once per cycle. And this way, when this rad bolt reflector shoots the rad bolt, it'll only go straight down and there will be no duplicate in the firing line. As you may know, there are 600 seconds in a cycle. We only want to trigger it once. You could also click on the mode button and say, okay, once per cycle or once in however many cycles, but we want it in one cycle. So let's try to say we'll turn it green for 3 seconds. That should be enough. And just to test it, let's hit the reset timer. Well, 3 seconds is too many. So let's just try 1. Will 1 second really be enough? It is. 1 second is enough. So we'll leave it on 1 in 600. And so once per day, our beautiful rad bolt generator, who's already got 1500 rad bolts, will power up our materials study terminal. And as long as I keep research selected and going, we'll be good. I really wish they'd add research queuing. It seems like such a small quality of life feature they haven't added yet. Oh, good, Gene. Glad to see you're doing better. I need to be on the lookout for another researcher. At a minimum, you're going to have somebody doing orbital research in space, and you're going to want to have another researcher on the ground finishing up the rest of it. Our battery box upgrade has been completed, so it's time to kill all the power. Which this will actually be a pretty good test to see how long it takes to drain all of our reserves. We'll just turn both batteries down to 0 and 0, which means these things just will not activate. It is the beginning of cycle 268. Let's see how long 44 batteries last with our current power draw. And there it is. I'm going to say about 3/4 of a cycle. Probably a little bit more considering most of these top batteries had not yet charged to 100%. But let's go ahead and get our oxygen supply back online. So before I turn these batteries back on, look at the awesome little bounce the manual generators are doing. Because they're stuck on 0 and 0, the automation grid keeps turning on and off. Nice little RGB effect though. Alright, we will go 98 and 70 on this one. And 98 and 50 on this one. And here comes the cavalry, which this highlights a perfect example, and I think I've figured out a good fix. You'll notice that we have a rancher and our demolitions expert on here. There's our farmer. This isn't a good setup. We only want these little power dupes running on these wheels as much as possible. Now, if they truly have nothing else to do, sure. But right now, there could be critters that need to be ranched, but Stinky will not tend to them until he finishes on the wheel, which kind of puts ranching on the back burner, and that's not what we want. So what we're going to do is we're going into priorities, and we're going to turn all the regular working dupes down priority on operating machinery. If this doesn't work as well as we want it to, I'll actually put doors and put some access controls to where only our power dupes can run on the wheels. I don't necessarily want to do that in case of emergencies. Nails, have you leveled up yet? You're still wearing your level 1 hat. No, you have not. Nails is one of our new runners who already has a machining score of 15 now. And looks like Jean is off of bed rest and back to researching. Way to go. Let's not stand over here though, okay? Alright, now for the subject at hand. And that is for our infinite food storage. Which means we need to make room here for our steam turbine and any sort of cooling that we want for our colony. Unfortunately, because I don't want to mess with this gravitas building, I don't want to move our ladder rungs and everything over too much. We may not be able to put our major transportation spine here. Alternatively, we could move all of this around, put our kitchen up here, the great rooms over here, and then move some more beds down here. And the reason why we're having this conundrum is because we need to fit our steam turbine. And if I bore this out a little bit, we could actually have enough to wall in before the ladder. But eventually, we would not have the room for our transport tubes. All right, before we make this decision, I think we need to really think about dupes on our main colony. Right now, we have 19. And the reason why we have to be careful with this is because we have to look at our power. And the best place to do that is here in the colony summary. You can see we're producing, well, before our little test example, right here, let's say 1,000 kilojoules per cycle. And we're not wasting very much of it. The only thing that's wasted here is coming from is our battery leakage. And that's only having 19 duplicants. So you figure if we run 60 duplicants in our main colony, about 40 of them can be just on power generation. And I believe that'll be enough. Now we'll have a bunch of other dupes throughout the solar system, but 60 is, I think, is what we're going to be aiming for. So we can now have a firm number of what we're actually planning for. 60 is a good estimate because with a water cooler and a mirth leaf to make this room a great hall, it takes 31 tiles minus the 3 for the recreation and the decor building means we're actually able to have 28 mess tables in a great hall, which that gives us 56 duplicants, so that's not too bad. So we could dedicate these spaces here, 1 to the kitchen, 2 to the great hall, move all the meal wood over here, and then the cots down here. And you may be wondering why this is so important of where the steam turbine goes. And it's because we want our cooling to be as close as possible to where that infinite food is being stored. The closer it is, the less power will require to keep cool. All right, this is what we decided. We're going to put our kitchen here and our 2 great halls here. For now, we'll stack all of our meal woods over here, and we'll try to squeeze as many cots in here as possible. Eventually, this will not be enough space for cots, and we'll have to move around our generators. And yeah, it's mostly because I'm too anal retentive. All my cots need to be in the same area. I know, it's a sickness. All right, this is a start. This is enough for 42 dupes. And now we have to find a spot for our snoring dupes. Looks like we found a purpose for this space down here. We could put our snoring dupes down here at the bottom corner of the base, next to the Drecos to keep them company. That seems mean. Actually, we can probably put our snoring dupes up here. We'll keep them with everybody else. And this will work out well. We'll keep our snoring dupes over here until late game. When we're done with materials research, we can then turn this into some more cots, and that'll give us enough cots for the entire colony. And then we'll just make sure our snoring dupes are off cycle sleeping from everybody else. Before we deconstruct these, let's make sure we manually assign Otto and Lyra. Otto, there's your new cot. Lyra, there's yours. And now we can confidently just deconstruct all of this. This piping would invariably get in the way, so we're going to have to move it around a little bit. We'll just slide it on right over here. Now that we know the kitchen's going here, we need to make sure we put this steam turbine in a perfect position. What normally happens is you start off with this small little kitchen, and then eventually you want to add the gas range, and then all of a sudden your kitchen is a mess. So let's try a couple of different things here. This might be a good spot for the electric grill. And then we want our refrigerator as close as possible. The key with the refrigerators, the auto sweepers have to be close enough to the infinite storage to hit both the grill and the refrigerator. This is the range of the auto sweeper before it'll be able to diagonally pick up through tiles. So let's see if maybe here is a good spot. Now that we have the infinite food storage area temporarily built, we can see this auto sweeper here will be able to both get the ingredients to feed the electric grill and be able to feed the refrigerator, and that is important. So I think we will stick it with this spot right here, but right now this has oxygen in it. That's not the medium that we want in there, so we're going to do something a little sneaky. We're going to have a duplicate sleep here for the night, and the carbon dioxide should fill this little area enough, and then when we block it in, it'll be right as rain. But before we do that, we probably need to get the metal tile down. For that, we have 3 different choices. There's a couple of different ways to infinitely deep freeze your food. One, you can have a metal tile here, which helps actually keep frozen food frozen. Or you can just try to supercool this tile in and of itself. And that would be supercooling the carbon dioxide. Just to be safe, I think we're actually going to use both methods. But for that, we have 3 choices of metals. We have steel, we have aluminum, and then we have copper. Let's examine the properties of each of these metal tiles and then make our decision. Examining the properties, you can see that iron has a thermal conductivity of 55 and a specific heat capacity of 0.44. As a refresher, thermal conductivity is the rate at which 2 materials will exchange heat or cooling, and specific heat capacity you can picture as sort of the battery of how much cooling or heat a tile or material can hold. The aluminum, you can already see, is much better than the iron at 205 thermal conductivity and a 0.91 specific heat capacity. And then finally, we have steel, which a thermal conductivity is 54 and a specific heat capacity of 0.49. In this case, I think we're going to go with the aluminum. We're going to put some more insulated tiles here. And to make sure that we're keeping our carbon dioxide in this little area, we're going to build this out first. Now that those are being built, we can throw our aluminum metal tile right there. Oh yeah, we're getting some great carbon dioxide in this tile. But before we lock it up, we need to do a couple of things. First, we need to put a conveyor chute in here. We are going to make it out of steel. And then we need to throw some piping in here. This would have been bad, wouldn't it? Let's move that oxygen ventilation around, shall we? We will bring it down another tile. No harm, no foul yet. Looks like we finally got our second researcher. I'm not entirely thrilled about Camille. She does start with that +H science, which is great. But she's buff. I guess she's going to be a buff researcher. Welcome to the colony, Camille. And Camille's already getting to work. Look at that side-by-side science team. Alright, now that we have the ventilation fixed, it's time to examine radiant gas pipes. Radiant gas pipes are a little bit different than radiant liquid pipes. Radiant liquid pipes, you use refined metal. Radiant gas pipes, on the other hand, use metal ore other than steel. Steel is one of those versatile materials that can be used as both an ore or a refined metal. And to highlight this, remember how in our metal tile, the aluminum tile was actually outperforming the steel tile. But watch what happens when we put a radiant aluminum ore pipe and a radiant steel pipe. Because this radiant gas pipe is an aluminum ore pipe, you can see that its thermal conductivity is 41 and specific heat capacity is 0.91. But the steel has even better thermal conductivity of 108. Now the specific heat capacity isn't as good, but that thermal conductivity is over twice as good. And we need that thermal conductivity. So we're going to use the radiant pipes in these 2 areas. And then the rest are going to be insulated. And for insulated, we have a few choices. We can go with obsidian, igneous rock, and we'll put sandstone just so you can see the difference between the 3. Now, when we're looking at these insulated gas pipes, we want a very low thermal conductivity now. And you can see here the sandstone is 0.09. The igneous rock is even lower at 0.06. And the obsidian is also at a 0.06, but notice it has a specific heat capacity of 0.20, and the igneous rock has a specific heat capacity of 1, which means not only does the obsidian not conduct heat or cooling very well, but it also doesn't even hold very much either. This is the ideal insulated gas pipe for what we have. Now it's time to put down the thermal regulator. And you might be wondering, why are we using a thermoregulator for cooling and not the thermoaquatuner? Well, the proof in the pudding is the thermoaquatuner takes 1.2 kilowatts and the thermoregulator only takes 240. So the thermoregulator will save us nearly 5 times the amount of power. Before I add this next gas bridge, I wanted to explain how this works. So just like our thermoaquatuner, we're going to do the same thing. The gas will come into the thermoregulator, and then directly into the bridge, and then out from the thermoregulator, back into the same bridge. Don't allow this bridge here to confuse it, it's just bringing the oxygen around. I definitely wanted to point out and highlight how all the piping looked before we added this gas bridge, because this one makes it look even more confusing. And then the final step is adding the gas pipe thermosensor and wiring it to the thermoregulator. I personally love the fact that the temperature control for the freezer is inside the kitchen. I think it's a nice little touch. And now we need to set up our beautiful steam turbine. Now, some of you may be confused. Well, Echo, you said you weren't going to use any other power generation other than manual generator. I did say that, and I mean that. This is not a power generator in this playthrough. It is only a heat deletion device, and we will not be plugging this into the grid. We won't even use it to feed its own system. That little plug right there, not getting plugged into anything. But before we can place the steam turbine, let's go ahead and fill this up with some water. I about messed up the whole thing. I was getting ready to put the water in here and I realized I built the thermoregulator out of aluminum ore, which has an overheat temperature of 75 degrees. Alright, that's much better out of our steel. Before we add all the water in here, we need to figure out how to vacuum this area out, because otherwise this thermal regulator will never be able to turn on because it'll be considered to be flooded. So I'm gonna have to do some thinking about this, because normally you tie one of these in with a thermoaquatuner and it'll provide enough heat regardless. It can work in water. The thermal regulator cannot. It can only work in gas. So here's what we're gonna do. We've added just a little bit of water in here, and that way the thermal regulator can still run. And we're going to put the steam turbine on and seal it all up, but we're going to put an air tile right here. Now this might be the dumbest idea I've ever had, because it probably won't work. We'll just create a mess, and we're going to be back at square one. But what I'm hoping is that this water will flash the steam and fill up this area and push all the oxygen out. Will it work? Probably not. And then we'll have to restart the whole thing. But it's worth a try. Now for our trusty heat deletion device. And I think we're ready to go ahead and load up this insulated gas pipe. Now, lucky for us, we just so happen to have a beautiful source of hydrogen right here that we can feed into it. Why hydrogen? Here's carbon dioxide. It has a thermal conductivity of 0.01. Here's some chlorine, even lower, 0.008. Here's some polluted oxygen at 0.02. But here's hydrogen at 0.16. Still ain't great, don't get me wrong. It is not the greatest conductor of heat or cooling. But as gases go, it's one of the best. And of course, we finished this off without completing the liquid vent. Thank you, duplicants. And all we'll do, siphon off a little of this hydrogen, get that loop going. And it doesn't appear that the thermoregulator is flooded out. Normally there's the little flooded symbol, but it may be because it doesn't even have anything in the pipe to use yet. We will see. Our cooling loop just finished cooling, so we can go ahead and delete this bridge. And the thermoregulator is working like a charm and not being flooded out. Now, thermoregulators don't generate a lot of heat. It's not a huge deal. You still need some cooling. You can see here that the water is not going up in temp very fast. It eventually will, and then we would need the cooling, which is the reason why we have this airflow tile and see if this crazy thing will work. Let me fast forward some cycles and see what we can get. On the flip side, our carbon dioxide is going down in temp rather well. We're already at -2 degrees. You can see the metal tile here is at almost -4. This is working out nicely. In fact, I think we can start switching over to this electric grill right here. And just like that, our new kitchen is working out great. You can already see the ingredients and the food are in there, and they're deep frozen, and they're in the sterile atmosphere because of the carbon dioxide, which means they are never going off. Absolutely beautiful. The hydrogen's doing a good job of keeping this tile and this atmosphere around -20. You can see the carbon dioxide there is at -20, and the metal tile is a little bit colder at -21. Now for the kitchen itself, this auto sweeper can reach the fridge, can reach the freezer, and can reach the electric grill. The key though is this conveyor loader that is on allow manual use. Whenever the duplicants get some meal ice, they come drop it off into this conveyor loader right here. It sends its way off into the freezer. And then when the electric grill is ready for more ingredients, it grabs them from right there. And then we have this refrigerator set on 3 kilos because we don't want a ton of food in here. You can see right now there's only about 3 duplicants worth. So as a dupe comes by and grabs food, the auto sweeper will take food from the freezer and refill the refrigerator. Now long term, when we're running all of our grub fruit plants, we'll have auto sweepers that pick everything up for the duplicants and they will ship it off into the deep freezer directly. But for now, this works just fine. This thermoregulator is going to take forever to get up over 100 degrees. So I think we're going to try something else out. Okay, remember everything I said about the steam turbine? Yeah, I don't even think we have to do that. Now this thermoregulator only runs every once in a while, and the water is keeping it cool, especially considering we're throwing cold oxygen through it. Remember, this oxygen is coming out at about 10 degrees, and it's only heating at about 10 degrees on the other side, so I think this is rather perfect. These radiant gas pipes should provide just enough cooling to keep this thermoregulator from overheating. You can see the thermoregulator is actually dropping in temperature right now. And eventually we'll be able to drop some supercoolant or something else in there. And the question is this oxygen always going to come out at such a low temperature? And I think it's going to. Not to mention that we're sending the cold polluted water all the way through the oxygen generation system. In fact, why don't we just try bricking this whole thing in? And this way we can really see if this oxygen coming through this pipe is going to have the thermal conductivity enough to keep this cold. Reason being is because now the environment will play no factor into it. Yeah, I think I'm going to call this somewhat stable. We will see. Worst comes to worst, we can break in here and add more radiant gas pipes that go all the way across the area to keep this whole box cool. We'll see. Now all we have to do is set up our new grate hall, conveniently located right next to the refrigerator. Our new grate hall is complete and is even adorned by a beautiful genius sculpture thanks to our nice Dr. Decorator. Thanks, Harold. And since we moved the grate hall, we added another running level. This one is set at 9890. So there should be 5 dupes running here pretty constantly. And then as for our kitchen, we finished it up by putting an auto sweeper here. This auto sweeper's job is to collect the finished cooking materials from the electric grill and put them in the conveyor loader that everybody else used to send them over to the deep freezer. Which this is the key, because this auto sweeper cannot reach the freezer. Otherwise, if it could, it would just keep cycling them back and forth. This auto sweeper job is to get things from the freezer. This auto sweeper's job is to put things into the freezer. As for our beautiful thermoregulator, we've waited 5 or 10 cycles, and it gets as low as 18 degrees. When it turns on, it doesn't even break 30 anymore. So I'm going to consider this system stable and a success, and that'll do it for today's episode. Next time, we're going to replace all this millwood with some grub fruit and get that whole grub fruit ecosystem going. I hope you had fun at this episode. I know I did. Talk to you soon.